Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please call the roll.
Yes. Madam Vice Mayor Breckus, absent at this time. Dewar,
Here.
Delgado, McKenzie, Jardin,
Here.
Bobzine, Shivi, absent at this time. Madam Vice Mayor, you do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The mayor is en route. She will be here shortly. We will start, Madam Clerk, with public comment. Again, reminding everybody that public comment is limited to 3 minutes. If you have more to say or have materials that go beyond the 3 minutes, please give the materials to the clerk, and someone from staff will be glad to speak with you after your 3 minutes so you may complete your comments. Madam Clerk, first speaker.
Madam Vice Mayor, our first public commenter is Darlene Hesse, followed by Alice Tulloch.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm here for Wild Creek Golf Course. I just cannot believe that this is a possibility that this golf course will disappear. This is going to be a $1 billion boondoggle, and I'm afraid that this school you're going to spend so much money to build this school that there won't be very much money for the other schools. I am for education, and I'm for schools and high schools, and I'll tell you right now, this is not a good idea. This is a golf course. It's built on a floodplain, and there's only one other thing it could possibly be, and that would be a park, a beautiful park. And gee, I read all your signs around here. You're for protecting open spaces, green areas. Well, it's not working for us. I don't understand why this is even happening. My neighbor said today he believes that if this golf course was in the city of Reno, that it wouldn't be going at all. This wouldn't even be happening. Now, all of you people have got together. I was told not to come here before because we should go to the RSCVA. Well, the RSCVA is having a meeting on November 15th at 7:30 in the morning, and it's called a retreat. And we do not get very good advertisement from the newspapers or anything. Nobody seems to want to hear about our feelings of losing this beautiful golf course. This is an open area. There's beautiful animals there. I've lived there for 40 years, and I'm telling you, this is a bad decision. And if you want to keep ruining all these green spaces, what do we have left? This should be protected. This is not a good thing that you're doing. I just cannot believe that this is even happening. But anyway, I think you people really should get together and take a look at the traffic problem. I mean, and we've got the high voltage power lines. This will really be a $1 billion boondoggle when they have to relocate the high voltage electrical, and they have to maybe bring in tons of soil. This soil has been contaminated by different things for 40 years, and I don't believe that would be a real healthy thing for kids to even have a school there. And the state-of-the-art school, we need education, we need good teachers, we need books, we need so many other things than to build the state-of-the-art school there. And as far as I'm concerned, this school should be built in Sun Valley. Sun Valley needs a high school. And a nice girl that I met there, she said that she had to be bused all the time over to one of the schools in Reno. Got up at 5 o'clock every morning, and she said, I'm for a high school in Sun Valley, and everybody else would like that too. Plus, you can have $10 an acre property for the BLM. And this property you're going to build on for this school is ridiculous priced. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, can we please have the record reflect that Councilwoman Breckus is present? Next speaker.
Madam Vice Mayor, Alice Tulloch would like to speak with the item today, not in general public comment. With that, we will move to Amy Jones, followed by Eric Novak.
Good morning. Amy Jones, for the record, Executive Director of the Reno Housing Authority. The Reno Housing Authority is planning to build a supportive senior housing project on Sutro, and we will be applying for home funds in the upcoming weeks. The proposed scale of this project is going to be 44 units, which is an appropriate size for our financing options. And so I'm here today to request that council approve the Reimagine Reno project with the following change: to assign a master plan use designation of multifamily neighborhood for those parcels in that Sutro area. And currently, the Reimagine plan will downzone the RHA parcels to a mixed residential to mixed neighborhoods. So that's going to be 8 to 15 units per acre. And this would limit the density for our property, and we're looking at 44 units for that property. So with the limited density at the 15 units per acre, it would not allow us a zone change that we need to the MF21 without first going through a master plan amendment. So if we have to go through a master plan amendment, that will delay our process about 6 to 9 months additional time and additional monies. Also, the zoning readiness threshold requirement for low-income housing tax credit is a requirement as well. So if we don't have that zoning approved, that may delay our ability to apply for those tax credits. So I'm just making the request that that designation of multifamily neighborhood for those parcels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Madam Vice Mayor, Eric Novak, followed by Sam Dene.
For the record, my name is Eric Novak. I'm president of Praxis Consulting Group in Reno. We're development finance consultants to the Sutro Street Senior Supportive Housing Project. First, I want to say that I'm very aware of the 2-year process that's occurred to develop the master plan, and we actually took part in at least 3 focus groups on affordable housing during the Reimagine process, and so are aware of this very last-minute request. But we're not asking the council to evaluate the project or the appropriateness of the zone change application at this time. We'll be submitting a rezoning application, and it will be a public process at that point. We're only asking that the council assist the RHA in removing a further regulatory barrier to the entitlements, that is the reduction of the density in the new master plan overlay. And Amy already went through some of the details that's in the memo that we sent to you. I just want to add, as you've heard many times, it's very, very difficult to find land for the production of new affordable housing. Reasonably placed land, or in this case, donated land that is near services and that is appropriately zoned is the needle in the haystack. And that the RHA has been assembling these parcels since the early 2000s. It was instrumental in stabilizing that immediate area with the Hillborough Place homeownership project. The site is on a transit line. It's a short distance from the Washoe County Senior Center. With the purchase of the Greater Harvest church properties next door, the Housing Authority has now assembled about 1.68 acres, and it's an appropriate size for a small 2-story elevator senior apartment building. We believe it's a missed opportunity for Reno, given the extraordinary need for affordable housing and service-enriched housing if we can't develop these parcels to their full potential. So thank you, and we're available for questions.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Madam Vice Mayor, Sam Dene, followed by Tom Polakalis.
Sam, DNA, Dene, the heart and soul and the body and mind of Reno government. I say that every time, and people say, what does that mean? It means that I am the heart and the soul and the body and mind of Reno government. I do everything philanthropically. I've done more for this community than all of the bureaucrats added together, multiplied by 10. If there was an honest voting system, I would be up there, and this city would not be halfway bankrupt, and people would be much happier. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I've been around. People say, what do you keep coming down here for, Sam? I have to keep coming down here. Thank goodness there comes the policeman there. I love it when the chief of police over there, well, it's not the chief, it's the assistant. I love it when the chief of police has a policeman down here every meeting to protect Sam against nefarious things that could be happening in the audience. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I spent many years flying fighter bombers, and I know what goes on around, and I've been to every city council meeting, every county commission meeting since 1994, -4. So you add that all up, 6,000 meetings, 11,000 public testimonies, telling the people what to do. I'm responsible for 92% of the good things about Reno. And if anybody, I say it every time, and everybody looks at me, policemen come up here and say, no, it's only 91%, Sam. I say Burning Man when they want to shut it down. I say the Air Guard that would not be here because they wanted fighter planes, and I ordered them to get C-130 cargo planes. That's what they have, and now we have a functional, very good Air National Guard that would not even be here, all the way up to the Tesla effect that I was responsible for. I go back to the basics of government. The basics of government. Who wins, who loses, who pays, and what do the people think? Let's start out with this Tesla thing that I was actually the driving force to bring here. Who wins? Tesla and all those people over there on the other side of the mountain, Tahoe Reno Industrial Complex. Who wins? Who loses? All of the people in Reno are losing. Sarah, they say they're bringing some jobs. Yeah, $12 an hour jobs, big deal. No benefits. So the people are losing. Who wins? Who loses? Who pays? The people are paying. All these schools, billion-dollar boondoggle school going on here. Who pays? And what do the people think? The people think this is a disaster, but the bureaucrats up there don't care because they're up there and they're at the beck and call of the people who buy their billboards and pay their way into those stolen seats up there. How about this? They call it the Wild Creek School. I call it the billion-dollar boondoggle. Just like that lady there. Who wins? Who wins? I'll tell you who wins. The developers are going to win. Everything from, I won't even name them. You can figure them out. The developers are going to win. Who loses? The citizens are losing because it's going to cost, they're paying $120 million for a $40 million school. It's crazy. It's just insane. Am I the only person in this room, maybe this lady too, and the chief of police, that has any kind of IQ, that has any spunk, gumption, patriotism? Thank you.
Madam
Thank
Clerk?
you over there.
Madam
Thank
Vice
you.
Mayor, our next public comment is from
You're
Tom
welcome.
Polakalis.
Madam Vice Mayor, members of council, Tom Polakalis, Reno resident. Just wanted to do two things. One, to commend the master plan in its evolution to have such a great focus on energy efficiency, clean energy, renewable energy, and overall conservation. So that is much appreciated by the clean energy community. What I did want to ask for your consideration today was to think about that city efforts don't operate in a vacuum. And while the city is making substantial progress and putting forth tremendous efforts in these areas, unfortunately, we're taking several backward steps at the federal government. And currently, there is a budget that is being proposed by the administration that would cut some of the programs that are listed in the master plan as being very valuable to the city's energy efficiency efforts. One such example are cutbacks to the Energy Star program, which is listed in the master plan draft under SD 23. So just for consideration, is there an opportunity for the city to write our congressional delegation, primarily Senator Heller, asking him, as a number of businesses have in the local area, to ask for full funding of the Energy Star program and the Department of Energy's energy efficiency budgets. Those have direct benefit to local residents in helping us save energy and money, stimulating the economy. So really that's what I just wanted to ask is consideration of taking a leadership role in trying to influence the national government because it does impact Reno residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Madam Vice Mayor, our last general public comment today is from Tammy Holt-Still.
Good morning, Tammy Holt-Still, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee for the record. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Dewar for coming out yesterday and taking a tour to see what's happening out in Lemon Valley with the city of Reno being our next door neighbors. And of course, Jenny for coming out also prior to. And you got to see a lot of what happens in Washoe County. And I understand that your partners in Washoe County are not always giving the city of Reno the information that is really real. So it's really nice to see interest from the city of Reno to help us residents out there, because some of the issues do have to do with the city of Reno besides Washoe County. I know there's a difference between, it's like church and state, but sometimes we have to all work together. So I really look forward to the city of Reno working with us more. I really appreciate it. I know I've had to stomp my feet, but there are some really bad things happening out there. And the lake is not going down. More of your affluent water is coming into the lake. We have residents that are going to be homeless, as you saw that stood behind me yesterday or on Monday. That couple, I am devastated that they will not be getting the assistance needed to get back into their home that they paid for years, and it's their retirement home. So there's a lot of issues that need to be done, and I like to keep addressing them, and I look forward to having help from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam
Madam
Clerk.
Vice Mayor, we have no further general public comment today.
Thank you very much. At this time, we are moving on to the approval of the agenda. I'd look to our city manager and fellow council members if you have any modifications. Okay, seeing none, may I get a motion? Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5, we are on to the subject of the day. Mr. Bill Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor and council members. For the record, Bill Thomas, Assistant City Manager. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce, as I have in our previous meetings regarding the master plan, the conversation we're going to have today. We do have with us, as we have in the past, Darcy White from Clarion Associates and Matt Prosser from EPS, as well as Sienna Reed, who's the staff person responsible for shepherding this through. This is what's billed as adoption of the master plan, which, as you'll hear, has been a very robust 2-year process to get to this point. I did want to lay out, most importantly, I think, what we're expecting from council today, so there's clarity on where we're going, and then also to let the public know. We had advertised this as the adoption, but we believe that what would be most productive in getting the plan done is for the council to really focus today on the information you get from the consultant presentation, the public comment, and your own individual review of the master plan to help us cull down to a list, hopefully a manageable list of items yet to be resolved, so that when we come back on December 13th, which is the day we'll request for the final adoption, December 13th council meeting, that you will be very comfortable that we vetted and reviewed everything of substance to be able to get this master plan adopted. The process has been long over multiple years, but it is important, in our opinion, to get some conclusion to this. There are private individuals, there are public activities, there are things pending, waiting on this master plan to help us guide what happens in our city. So our city doesn't sit still as we work through this. And even though this is complex and there's not a date sensitive, we really would like for this plan to be completed by the end of the year. That was our target. We're very much within reach of it. So again, hopefully today we will be able to successfully help you narrow down what are the lists of issues that are left.
Thank you. One moment. Councilwoman Breckus.
Yeah, just on this point, Mr. Thomas, I have one question. I think it's next meeting. The city council has a recommendation from the planning commission for a development. It essentially is appending a mid-size Nevada city to our northern borders. It's probably the most significant and impacting development request that's come forward to this region in the last 15 years. And I'm wondering about the timing of that because, obviously it's mid-cycle. Staff has reviewed it to the existing master plan. So did the planning commission. But, I was thinking that perhaps if it had been adopted today, we could refer back. Do you think that will have any impact delaying this decision today? On our review of that and the work we have to do on that.
So it would be hard for me to reach a conclusion without that hearing happening, but at risk of stepping into the world of the city attorney's office, they fully knew when they turned in their application what the nature of the conversation with the master plan is, and I don't think anybody doesn't know the conversation going on with the master plan. So to the extent that your conversation on that project relates to the master plan, I think that's relevant. I don't know that it would be the sole basis for deciding on the application, but I don't think the delay moving it to December 13th is in my opinion, a make or break it issue as far as that particular application.
If I may, isn't there a pending ordinance doctrine that we could perhaps rely upon to apply the master plan? I know the councils have done that in the past.
I'll defer that. I know it's been past practice that once people are aware of and a defensible position, once people are aware of the conversation and the issues that are being discussed, it can play into the decisions on an individual application. However, we do allow people to file their applications and bring them forward in the context in which the rules are set out.
Councilwoman Bobzien. Councilman Bobzien. It's early.
That's fine. Thank you. On this question of the timing, the other piece that I'm concerned about is just having this wrapped up as soon as possible so that we can prepare ourselves for fully engaging in the regional plan update. And so much of what I believe we're going to achieve with this master plan update is going to be very informative and will lead the way for our conversations with our partners in the regional plan update. So, I think here we are. We've gone through this 2-year process. We're close to being done. Quite frankly, I'm ready to go ahead and move ahead and adopt. But if we do in the course of, and I think it's prudent, if we come to this last meeting and we have some further tweaks that need to be made that we feel like have to be discussed and vetted, rather than doing it on the fly and trying to ram it and get it done today, let's hear what those points are and then send staff back to finesse and try to incorporate suggestions into the plan in a way that's consistent with the language and the themes overall in the plan itself. But I find myself a little uneasy about waiting until December since we've had so much time, all of us individually as council members, to guide this process along the way. But nonetheless, here we are. So I'm not offering a specific where I want to go. I'm just also flagging the fact that we're bumping up against the regional plan update, and it does concern me that we're going to be pushing this kind of close into December. It is what it is.
Thank you very much. And I do believe that Stonegate Project has kind of designed their project in accordance with the draft master plan. So, barring any major changes, we can't keep moving the ball. They've kind of designed things for 2 years under a current, draft master plan. So anyway, city attorneys, did you have anything to add? That would be a no. So I'm not sure if Councilwoman Breckus' question got answered.
No, I think it's fine. I think, to Mr. Bobzien's point is, if you look at our last master plan, it was adopted by the Planning Commission in 1993 and the City Council in 1997. And I've always wondered what the story was there. So 4 years or 4 weeks, I think, goal, yeah.
We prefer 4 weeks.
Yeah, our preference is 4 weeks. Let's stick with the 4 weeks. All right. Yes, Councilman McKenzie.
And thank you. And to the point of the upcoming project, I can't help but think that we have to look at especially major master plan guiding points that we've got when we look at that project, because those have been out for quite a while, and that development should have, there's nothing says that that's not going to get continued until after the first of the year, which maybe that's the cleanup, is to not hear that next week, have it continued until after the first of the year, so that we have this firmly in place so that that development comes in under the new master plan. Because there's nothing worse than having a plan and then trying to mess it up before you even get it adopted. So I think that there's a lot to be said about if this plan is going to take longer, to wait for those major projects until this plan is in place.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. So at this point, I just want to introduce the next speakers. Eric Jensen wanted to make a brief comment, our Community Development Director, and then Darcy White from Clarion Associates will be giving the presentation for today. And staff will, of course, be available as you move forward to answer questions to make this a very productive process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, I know we took general public comment. Do we have any public comment on this specific agenda item?
Madam Vice Mayor, before we proceed, this was noticed as a public hearing, so I would like to open the public hearing if we can before we proceed with presentation and process, please.
Okay. At this time, we will open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, was proper notice given?
Madam Vice Mayor, proper notice was given on this item, and we received one letter in support. Additionally, we do have public comment from Alice Tulloch, followed by Craig Smyers.
Alice?
Hello, my name is Alice Tulloch, and I'm a resident of Reno. And I want to just take a minute to say that I'd love to hear the presentation before we make comments, but this is a planning process, and the city of Reno has before it some plans for how to organize their land development in the future. But I think there's other levels of planning that the city's engaged in that I want to support, and that would be the sustainability plan. Those need to be melded together, the land use plan and how we arrange our city functions and the community. So renewable energy is going to be the next subject that's going to come before the council, and so I'd like to encourage us to think widely about our future. This is a 20-year plan. Thank you very much.
Our next public comment is from Craig Smyers, followed by Sam Dene.
Members of the City Council. To have built Spring Mountain on Winnemucca Ranch would have cost major highway improvements, over an hour drive time for city's employees, over 1 million tons of additional CO2 from years of added commuter miles. Never mind that Winnemucca Ranch has a wetland with rich green shores along pond and cattails and abundant wildlife, rich in native plants. A trail winds up a narrow rock-walled canyon with native bees and birds. It's a gem of wildlife habitat on the extreme northern edge of Reno's sphere of influence. There is one way in and one way out of Winnemucca Ranch and the Marshall Ranch area. There would have been pressure to build a highway connecting Winnemucca Ranch and US 395. Where there are highways, spring up subdivisions, isolated suburbs with no bus service. Like what's easy for developers, damn what people want, and the master plan. We'd go from a semi-compact city to the worst sprawl possible. If Spring Mountain had been built, then all that would have been inevitable. The cost of building and supporting the sprawling infrastructure and the cost to serve the people would have been at least hundreds of millions of dollars more than compact growth. All those extra carbon emissions from Winnemucca Ranch times what? I don't know, but the answer is something over 1 million tons of unnecessary CO2. I've included my calculations. Right now, from a floor above us, you can look north and see BLM land that runs unfenced to the Arctic Circle. A Winnemucca connection cuts it off at the neck and leaves a biological island to wither. There'll be less wildlife, and many animals will, in time, disappear with the deer. 10 years ago, there was an attempt to pass a law to allow non-contiguous annexation of Winnemucca Ranch. AB 513 was soundly defeated by a citizen lobbying effort. Years later, non-contiguous annexation slipped through the legislature after institutional memory had faded and no one was watching. These developers are patient and will wait until they have a receptive city council. Allowing non-contiguous annexation starts a chain of events that you can't stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Sam Dene, followed by Tammy Holt Still.
Sam, DNA. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate, spent many years flying fighters and bombers, and I've spent the last 25 years attending these meetings trying to be Mr. Nice Guy, but it's almost impossible when, if a person had to walk in my shoes, and I do it philanthropically, and see what I see every day, every week, every month, everything between blundering and just pure outright tragedies that I watch every single day. There are some good things, don't get me wrong, but I seem to have to focus on the bad things because nobody ever points them out. What we have right now is they're discussing this thing called the master plan, which may last 10 years, 15 years, who knows what, and these folks up here with massive backgrounds in geography and all of those things that they don't have. At any rate, they're going to decide what to do with this community because they were supposedly elected by the people who want to control what is going to happen in this community. And we have some very important people missing this meeting right now. You should demand that they come here. Maybe you're having secret meetings with them, I don't know. You've got the Tahoe Reno Industrial Complex over the mountain there in Story County that is basically controlling and destroying our city. From taxes to flooding to just boondoggle one after another. The school boondoggle, that school tax, the citizens supposedly voted on last year, and I don't think that was an honest election because I did my own polling and I didn't talk to one person who was in favor of that school tax. But now we got the school tax and it's supposed to be for schools, but you think you're going to have honest, logical people running the thing. No, you've got the people who wins, who loses, who pays. Who wins is the people who are building those project out there, and something needs to be done. You need to address that Wild Creek billion-dollar boondoggle as part of this master plan and say no to it right now. No to it, right within the master plan. The EDON should be here. Where's EDON? Is anybody from Economic Development Authority, Western Nevada? They are responsible, and the beloved Colonel Kazmierski, I know his heart's in the right place, but they're responsible for more of the terrible things that are happening in our community than anybody else. The glut in these relatively low-paying jobs is just destroying the average citizen. The moms and pops here. What about the moms and pops? EDON brings in all these people and they give them all these tax breaks. Look at this disaster over there with Tesla. They might even be bankrupt by the end of the year or early next year. People aren't buying their cars. The whole thing is a disaster. And EDON gives them all of those breaks. Hundreds and hundreds of millions. What about the poor mom? What about Dolan Auto? Dolan Auto's not getting these breaks. The people, the good old moms and pops who are here all these years, nobody's taking that into account. And that's my point. You've got the wrong people. You've got maybe the right people because you're the voter. You making the decisions. But you should demand that Tahoe Reno, Lance Gilman, Don Roger Norman, they should be here telling you why they're not paying for any of the damage that they're causing to our community. Anybody have any questions? Did anybody understand what I just said? I think
Madam
sometimes
Clerk.
I speak over your heads.
Our next public comment is from Tammy Holt Still, followed by Darlene Hesse.
Thank you. And reminding everybody, we are on discussion about the master plan, so your comments need to relate
Yes,
to that
it
discussion.
is.
Okay.
Tammy Holtstill, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee, for the record. I've been looking over your master plan. In your master plan, I noticed that there's not anything discussing the NRS that talks about postage stamping within the annexation of Washoe County unincorporated. A good example will be the Prado Ranch that will be coming up as a PUD for you. It is not attached to, except for Lemon Drive, there are no boundaries around it that are the city of Reno. Prado Ranch wants to build in a floodplain. I noticed in your master plan, you don't talk about the issues of building in floodplains and that kind of thing. Those are all important to, again, Lemon Valley and what you are doing with the master plan. you, you got to build your infrastructure to have your developments, to have the money available. So maybe it's time when this master plan is being done that if there is an extenuating finger going out from the nucleus of the city of Reno, maybe it's time to have those developers paying for that infrastructure, because you need the police, you need the fire, and all of that. So, and the city and the schools, you need all that you need all that before you can just start growing nilly-willy. And I know you guys are trying not to be nilly-willy, but there's a lot of things that are not being addressed and haven't been addressed. That's why we're in the situation we are in Lemon Valley. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Darlene Hesse.
Well, hello, everyone, again. I'm talking about Wild Creek, and I really don't know very much about the master plan at all. In fact, I hardly know a thing. I've been working on this for several months, and we don't know anything about anything. It's a terrible situation. Now, I know the golf course wasn't on the master plan from what Mr. Brierly, my neighbor, said, but now I guess it's going to be on the master plan. But what about the green space around there? What about all the animals? What about the golfers? What about our beautiful park, our beautiful area? How can this be happening to us? This is not a fair thing that is happening. And I just think that all four entities getting together and making all these decisions is a very bad choice. You didn't even invite any of us. You didn't invite any of us to any kind of a meeting. And it's just an unfair thing, and I would like a copy of that master plan. I don't even know where the heck to get it. I'm just a regular concerned person, and I do not feel as though you're doing the job for the people of the state of the Washoe County, and the people of Washoe County should be outraged about this. And everything that you do, you should consider people and consider their thoughts and how their feelings are. And this is my town, and this is Sparks, Nevada, and I do not like a city of Reno school in Sparks, Nevada. And this is our golf course, and this is our park and our animals. And you people really should understand that. This is not a good thing you're doing. You're ruining a beautiful area. You have ruined so many beautiful areas. Growing up here, Reno was a delightful area. Reno was beautiful always. The downtown area was lovely. The Sparks area was lovely. Now you're bringing in all these developers, and you have so many things going on. I guess they're all included in the master plan to just absolutely ruin our whole cities, both cities. And I don't know why Reno is even involved in this. I think it's just a horrible situation. And you people are responsible for doing this, and if we lose this golf course, it's going to be your memories of doing it and your responsibility to the people of Washoe County. And everybody should come to the meeting on November 15th and talk to and represent the RSCVA. Tell them that this is wrong. This is wrong. You have no business, as far as I'm concerned, doing this. I'm a taxpayer. We paid a lot of money. I can't even get the weeds taken from my yard, because nobody even knows where if it's in the city of Sparks or city of Reno or Washoe County. It's unbelievable. I live in the sphere of no influence, not sphere of influence. But I'll tell you what, I'm here to represent this golf course, and you guys are making a very big mistake. And all you people are so powerful. But I wonder sometimes, how much do you really open your eyes and see? How much do you really see? You should really be aware of what's happening. And the Washoe County people should be outraged about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can someone from staff make sure that she gets a copy of the master plan? Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Madam Vice Mayor, we have no further public comment. Just to clarify for the record, we did receive 3 letters, 2 from concerned citizens, Kimberly Rodemeyer and Craig Smyers, and then 1 in support from Amy Jones and the Housing Authority with the amendment as stated and was sent to council on the record. Additionally, Councilman Breckus, we're waiting on that?
Yeah.
We're good. This is a resolution. I would like to have the city attorney read the resolution at this time, and then we can proceed. Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much. City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. This is resolution number 8455, case number LDC 18-00023, adoption of City of Reno Master Plan and repeal of existing master plan, adoption of a comprehensive City of Reno Master Plan consistent with Nevada revised statutes 278-150 to 278-240, and repeal the existing City of Reno Master Plan. The master plan contains guiding principles, goals, policies, implementation strategies, and various supporting maps, including a land use plan map. These components of the master plan will guide future decisions related to development and land use, natural resources, mobility, infrastructure, public services, and other issues of interest to the city and its citizens as the City of Reno grows and evolves.
You sure you're done? That was brief. That was as long as the 2 years of meetings we've had on this. Okay, let's do this. Come on up.
Madam Vice Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman Breckus.
May I make one correction to what the clerk said? It's just an addition. It's that I provided public comment on the master plan for the record, and I think that was uploaded to the meeting items and distributed.
I have it, thank you.
Okay.
Go for it.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the council, Eric Jensen, Community Development Director for the record. This will probably the last opportunity that we're going to have our consultants with us, and so I wanted to take just a few moments and recognize them and all of the people who've been involved in this process since the beginning. First of all, I wanted to thank you, the council, for making the investment in the master plan. There's a lot of places the council could spend the taxpayers' money, and the investment that you've made in the master plan, I think, will provide dividends in the future far beyond the money that you've invested. And so I want to thank you for having the foresight to do that. Second, Darcy and Matt, who are here with us, who you're going to hear from later today, they've been with us through thick and thin for the last 2 years, longer than I've been with the city, and they've done an amazing job. This is without a doubt the best master plan process I have ever participated in my career, my 20-year career. So I want to acknowledge them for that. To Claudia, to Alex and Dan on my staff for the work that they did. Alex was the acting city or community development director for a year at the beginning of the process while still serving as the code enforcement manager, and he did a fantastic job moving this process forward. To Dan Hawley, who has regularly provided assistance to the other divisions in our department so that we could focus on the master plan. And then to Claudia for managing a very shorthanded staff over the last 2 years, again, so that Sienna could spend time working on this master plan, devote all of her time to this. To Maureen McKissick, who's no longer with us, but who spent many, many hours in phase 1 doing the public process that set the basis for the policies that we are about to adopt. To Callie Wilsey, who joined us and who took over the public facilitation process and set up all the meetings and helped. Sienna was her right-hand woman for the last year who made all of this possible.
How many meetings?
I couldn't even count them. I don't know, Sienna, how many?
They're on a slide, but.
Yes, okay. Many, many, many meetings. To Sienna, of course, for her countless hours, meeting with stakeholders, for drafting the policy. Many, many times I left late in the evening, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and she was still in her office drafting away. And so it would not have happened without her. There's no question. She was the right person at the right time. And then lastly, I wanted to thank Bill Thomas, who's the only person who has been involved in every aspect of this plan from the very beginning, from the time the budget was allocated all the way through to hopefully he'll still be here for implementation. I think we have to recognize Bill for that. He was the backbone behind this process. And so with that, I just want to turn it over to our amazing staff and to our consultants and thank them for the job that they did.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, Madam Vice Mayor and members of the council. Darcy White with Clarion Associates. Wanted to give you a brief run-through of the master plan. I'm going to start off. Sienna is actually going to walk us through some of the outstanding policy directions we've been working on since we last saw you in July, but I'm going to give you a quick overview to start off and kind of set the stage for that conversation. We've talked a lot about the time frame here, but just for recap for those in the audience, about 2.5 years ago, we actually started the process. We spent about the first year of our time working with the community, and that was really where I think the staff role that Eric talked about was essential. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second in terms of getting that participation. That really set the stage for some of our discussions in terms of key choices. We spent a lot of meetings working with City Council and Planning Commission, talking about what some of the options were, some of the choices for the future, and thinking about trade-offs. And that really got us into our draft master plan, which was released for initial draft in July of this year. So for the last 3 months, we've essentially been working through refinements to the plan, and, based on what we heard from Planning Commission and Council, the community, other stakeholders, to get us to this point. And so I think we've tried to make the process as transparent as possible. All of the red lines that we've made along the way are posted on the website for anyone who's interested in kind of seeing how the drafts have changed over the last few months. But that's really kind of how we've gotten to this point today, and we're happy to be here, as all of you are as well, I know. In terms of the community engagement process, there were really 2 phases to this, and I think it's worth noting that this was the most robust community engagement process the city has ever done, and that was really thanks to those who kind of started the process with us early on, Bill and Maureen and Brianna, who kind of led the phase 1 visioning work. 5,800 people participated. We work on a lot of master plans and a lot of different communities, and these are pretty phenomenal numbers. I think that's worth noting. A lot of meetings, probably more than we can count. But even during phase 2, when we fully expected that interest in the process would start to wane and people would kind of lose interest, I think we've heard even more interest from the community about, this is great, we've come up with a vision, but where are we going to go with it? So I think you see that consistency in the community that's really taken us to this point. So in terms of the master plan itself, I think because it's been a longer process, I want to just kind of revisit some of the factors that were really driving this process. So we've all experienced population change, growth, all of these things that we would expect that would be driving this. I think it's important to note in this process, I think there was a real desire for the city to make sure that the plan was very proactive about how the city within this larger region was really helping to shape and drive the type of change that you wanted to see. And obviously there's a lot of external forces involved related to housing and employment, but the plan process has really tried to make the city more proactive and shape where the city wants to go on those various issues. That being said, the process was also intended to really be clear about what challenges you have. You have a lot of development that's been approved already, some infrastructure challenges, those things that we'll talk about here in a moment. So a lot of different things that we looked at, but also really trying to build the plan around the community's vision. That's why there was so much time spent on that in the beginning of the process. It would have been very tangible, normal to take a year to do a process like this, and really kind of spend only a few months on visioning. The city chose to do a much more exhaustive process early on, and that was a very deliberate choice. As a result, the plan is really based on, directly kind of draws from what we heard from the community. We've talked a lot about some of those key outcome areas and how that relates to the plan. So definitely a community-driven process, and that was really what led us to those key choices that we talked about with Planning Commission and Council over several meetings. So getting into the plan and policy framework that kind of came out of those pieces, this is really the meat of the plan, and this is really what guides day-to-day decision-making. It provides that framework for you as you consider different choices that the city has to make. In some cases, there are very clear answers in the plan. In other cases, it's going to take some understanding of how to weigh different choices that you have to make and what the trade-offs are going to be in different situations. And that's really the role of the master plan, is to provide that framework for decision-making and give you guys the tools that you need to consider different things. The other objectives for the policy framework were really to build on the other projects that you have underway. The Sustainability and Climate Action Plan has been of great interest to the community. In particular, as we've gone through the process, the Downtown Action Plan happened during the master plan process. This is very closely aligned to that. And there are a variety of initiatives that the different departments have underway that we've worked closely with them to align with this process. And lastly, I'll say, one of the key goals here was really to make the plan more user-friendly, not just for the city organization and those who kind of use it on a day-to-day basis, but to make it more understandable to the community and those who need to access the information. We've talked about the 8 guiding principles that really serve as the basis of the plan. This really, again, came from the vision that we heard from the community. In terms of trying to make the plan more user-friendly, one of the things we've tried to do is make sure that there's a real clear through line between that vision and the goals, the policies, and the implementation strategies that will help carry that out. These are the questions that we've heard again and again in our public meetings is, well, we really like where this is headed. We want to know how you're going to move forward with it. So I'll talk a little bit more about implementation here in a moment. The updated master plan very much builds from the foundation that you have in your current master plan. We have added some new topics. Economic development was a key new section in the plan, as well as expanded discussion on a range of topics: sustainability and resilience, hazard mitigation, housing and neighborhoods, a whole host of issues. So the goal here was really to make sure that the plan is more comprehensive and to make sure that it's more relevant to not just planning, but to everyone in the organization. We've also, in the interest of streamlining, consolidated a number of the plans within the plan that you had in your current master plan. So consolidated the center corridor and neighborhood plans into a new structure that really provides that more site-specific guidance in terms of different types of development in the community. So you've got a lot of detail there and really take a lot of the best practices that were previously only limited to those areas of the community that had a sub-area plan to the whole city. The growth and reinvestment framework is another key component of the plan, and this was really designed to make provide more clear direction about how and where development will occur in the city. One of the themes that came out through the process is really that this is, while infill and redevelopment are a key priority for the city, we talked a lot about that, that's going to be balanced with greenfield development. And so we've tried to make that point through the process in terms of how that fits, that you need to support both of those things and plan for both of those things. We've also made updates to update the land use plan to align it with the residential and employment demand. And this is really going to help you track where you are over time. So in terms of the land use plan map, there were a number of changes that we talked about here. The prior map has been translated based on underlying zoning and neighborhood plans, as well as adopted PUDs and SPD handbooks. And this is a shift in that it really does provide an overall picture on one map of what the city's ultimate growth will look like. This was largely, in many cases on the outskirts, driven by projects that have been approved 10 years or more ago that were not, that had not yet been built out. So there were some targeted changes to address some of the policy decisions that were made, and we've also updated the land use categories. So it's worth noting the SPA designation is being phased out, and that we've made some adjustments to the residential land use categories as well as mixed use and employment to provide more layers of specificity to help adapt different parts of the city to kind of get what you're looking for. It's a little less one size fits all in those cases to try to make it more predictable and more flexible in terms of supporting the overall goals. The concurrency management system is another key part of the growth and reinvestment framework. And this is really what provides the guidance about what types of infrastructure and services developers must provide, and also provides a framework for long-term planning for the city itself. It's worth noting, I think, that most plans that we've worked on, most cities that we work with, have policies that guide infrastructure and services and generally require development to pay its own way. That's a pretty standard consideration in a master plan like this, I think. However, the City of Reno's concurrency management system that we started with is much more robust. This is a pretty detailed system that you have. What we've tried to do through this process is to make it more clear in terms of what those expectations are for different types of services, who provides them, how they're funded, who pays to maintain them. It's a very complex set of requirements and different organizations that do that. We've worked very closely with the different departments and service providers in updating this system to make sure that it's in line with how they are kind of using the plan today. And in many cases, it was out of date. And also in line with best practices in terms of how cities are kind of working through these types of issues. One of the changes that we have made in this case is to be more clear about what's required. And this is really kind of a distinction between the more infrastructure related services, so water and sewer, versus some of the more flexible things like police and fire. And so we've established a distinction between requirements and targets. And this is really not intended to mean that the targets are any less critical. It's really just a way of providing you the flexibility to adapt based on funding and other things over time. So this is a shift in this plan. Sienna will talk a little bit more about this when we get to the policy discussion. Implementation and monitoring, this is a new section for the plan and something that's very important. One of the key goals here is really to set realistic expectations about how this plan will be carried out. It's been noted today already that this is a 10 to 20-year plan. When people talk about setting a vision, I think it's easy to get excited and think, you know, this is something we can do overnight. And I think this is really a way to kind of give you a roadmap in terms of how to break that down and how to work incrementally towards that vision. So there's a real emphasis here in the implementation plan on collaboration. This is not just the planner's plan. This is something that really affects and is, you know, really needs the support of all departments in the city, as well as a number of regional partners. And so, again, we've worked very closely with those folks to make sure that this plan is aligned with kind of where they're headed, and this is really becomes more of an umbrella tool for the city in terms of thinking about implementation. So there's two tiers to the recommendations, the implementation strategies, which are comprehensive, kind of everything that we think needs to be done to kind of move the vision forward based on what we know today, but also breaks out some priority initiatives that you can think about for the next 1 to 2 years. So there's 7 of those. We talked about 6 of those when we were here in July. We added one additional one, the completion of the Sustainability Action Plan as a separate initiative, and that was kind of something that was discussed then. But these really reflect not just the opportunities for you to make the most progress in the near term, but also reflect what we've heard clearly from the community as their top priorities. And so I think it's important to note that you know, these initiatives in some case are very specific to one thing, for example, economic development strategy, but a lot of them really relate to all aspects of the master plan. So there's a lot of cross-cutting issues in the plan and, you know, a lot of ways to advance all of those guiding principles through individual initiatives. We've also established a framework for monitoring the plan over time through progress reports to City Council and Planning Commission, as well as to the community. And this is another case where we heard strongly from the community a desire to be kept informed as the city moves forward with the process of implementing the plan and kind of being able to track that over time. The general rule of thumb for kind of looking at more substantive updates is about every 5 years, and you may or may not need to make changes, but typically you are going to need to update some of your data and other types of requirements. But this is a way to kind of promote transparency and accountability in the implementation process. And then lastly, we've also included a set of performance measures to help you understand and the community kind of understand how you're progressing in different areas. And so these are kind of you know, quantifiable pieces of information that will help you track progress in different areas. You know, there's no one way to look at that, but this gives you a range of things that kind of help convey progress over the range of the guiding principles. So that's a new tool that's been incorporated as well that would be updated as part of those annual progress reports. So the last thing I'll mention is that there are a number of technical resources that really were used to kind of convey, to inform this plan, and those are captured in the appendices. So those who are interested in more detail on housing or fiscal questions, you know, a whole host of issues, those pieces of information are available We've provided links to those and other things, but we've kept those in an appendix to keep the plan at a manageable size. So a lot of great resources there when you need them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sienna. She's going to walk us through our remaining policy issues for today, and then we'll go from there.
So thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm excited to be here with you today to really walk through 9 outstanding policy issues that were raised at our last joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council at the end of July. And here really to convey the direction that the Planning Commission has provided on each of those issues. And just as a heads up, all of the outstanding policy issue changes that were recommended by the Planning Commission are shown in red line in your packet today. So as you can see on this slide, these were the 9 outstanding issues that were raised. These are issues that either represent a very significant shift away from the city's current policy, or issues that the community has been really interested in over kind of our range of engagement opportunities. So we wanted to make sure in terms of moving forward with any potential changes that we had a really clear rationale and basis for why those changes would be of benefit to the issue at hand. And to further that, what we also did for each of these issues is prepare an outstanding policy issues document, really providing a bit more detail in terms of background, legal considerations, and then what is the rationale in the plan. And then again, if there were some suggested changes, what was the basis for those changes, so we could be very clear and transparent to the community regarding why the changes would be a good path forward. So in terms of our goal today in walking through each of these issues, we'd like to kind of give you the review of what the Planning Commission recommended. Certainly know that there's likely going to be discussion on these items, but hold that until we come back for discussion at the end. So really here, first up, in terms of level of service, the Planning Commission discussed the comment that the level of service targets identified in Chapter 4 of the Master Plan, our Growth and Reinvestment Framework, could create some unrealistic service expectations in the future if the city can't necessarily deliver on all of those targets right away. And so in discussing this issue, the Planning Commission really focused on what's in our concurrency management system in Chapter 4 of the plan, and then how does that get used in conjunction with a variety of level of service policies found in Chapter 2 of our master plan, because they really do have to be utilized together. So in terms of that concurrency management system, really noting that it's comprised of 2 main components, those concurrency requirements that apply simply to infrastructure and facilities. They're the requirements that can be placed on development. But what is supporting those concurrency requirements are level of service targets, and those get used in a variety of ways. First off, we use them to inform the type and location of infrastructure and facilities constructed by development, but then we also have to use them in our development review process, and that's where coming in with the other policies to support them also comes into play. So in terms of those other policies, did want to highlight the Planning Commission really did focus on those citywide policies in Chapter 2 that really look to limit development if the city is not able to expand and provide services in line with those targets, looking to promote development patterns that are more cost efficient to serve, and then really ongoing level of service monitoring is also called for in those policies. So in terms of a recommended approach here from the Planning Commission, they did recommend the use of targets, and they really note that these targets are of benefit. They convey the reality of service provision, that for some particular services, they vary by location, the type of land use as well. And so not only do we convey actually how those services are provided, but we also note that the city is looking to increase level of service over time. To really add some clarity, what the Planning Commission did recommend is some additional language that does note achieving the targets will be dependent on growth and funding over time, just so that the community is very clear on that point. Also on the topic of level of service, the Planning Commission considered the comment that a lack of information about existing levels of service made it difficult to understand if the targets that were proposed were the right targets. And so what we did here to kind of assist that discussion was prepare a comparative table outlining what is our existing level of service, where it's known, what does our current master plan call for, and then what's our proposed master plan calling for. Here what we noted was that our targets are very similar in our new master plan compared to our old master plan. There have been certainly some updates to reflect departmental planning documents, best practices, but as we look towards the future, they should be able to serve us well. And so what the Planning Commission recommended is really no change to the level of service targets that are proposed. The table that was provided for comparative reference, they didn't recommend that coming into the master plan, but really noted it can serve as a starting point for that ongoing monitoring of level of service that the master plan does call for. And here to round out some of our level of service issues, the Planning Commission also considered levels of service related to roadways. As recommended by the Planning Commission, they believe the draft plan should continue to specify that roadway level of service does vary by the type of roadway. For our regional roads, service levels are set by the Regional Transportation Commission, and they really range from D to E for most roads, depending on the segment in question. For our local roadways, the Commission did not recommend adopting level of service targets, really noting that it's these local roadways that carry the lowest volumes of traffic. And even as we have infill and redevelopment that occurs, they often maintain very high levels of service. They did feel, just to be very clear, that adding an additional policy about the maximum utilization of roadways and designing them to be as narrow as possible, not only to enhance safety, but then to reduce city maintenance costs was a good approach. So they have recommended that. Shifting gears here to some water-related topics, the Planning Commission also considered the comment that stronger policy direction was needed in relation to closed basin flood management. And as far as this conversation goes, the Commission really reflected on numerous policies in the draft master plan that relate to floodplain as well as stormwater management. So collectively, what those policies do is mitigate the impacts of development in floodplains, really look to seek to restore floodplain function if possible, and then manage stormwater volumes, really trying to prevent on-site flooding, reduce stormwater volumes, and then also retain stormwaters on-site. So after reflecting on kind of the various policies in the draft plan, what the Planning Commission did recommend is one update to an existing policy and then the addition of 2 new implementation strategies to really complement this full suite of policies. So in terms of the amended policy, they recommended changes to policy 6.2E, and this is the policy that relates to floodplain management, prohibiting fill in floodplains unless the flood elevations won't be increased and hazards to other properties don't result. They thought making it very clear in that policy that it does apply not only to the Truckee River Basin, but also to our closed basins, so they've recommended that approach, as well as an implementation strategy to evaluate runoff retention calculations and mitigation strategies for our closed basins. Look to update our stormwater management ordinances to take those things into account after a fresh look at them. And then also another implementation strategy to review and evaluate the Truckee Meadows Regional Drainage Manual in partnership with our regional partners. Additionally, related to water, the Commission heard the comment that there was concern that new development should not be served by a private water purveyor. And so really in considering this policy change, the Planning Commission heard a lot of information regarding TUMWA's legal authority, and here really namely that the city cannot require TUMWA to extend its retail service area. That's a choice that is made solely by TUMWA. And so given this, what the Planning Commission did support was a new policy that really provides a much clearer sense of where the city is coming from in terms of water supply preference, so supporting the management of surface and groundwater resources by promoting TOMWA efforts and directives, and that's really in their cooperating agreement, discouraging new or expanded private water purveyors, so definitely providing a lot more clarity there on the city's preference, and then encouraging development that is served by a private water purveyor to design its water systems to TOMWA standards. And supporting that policy would be a new implementation strategy looking to design new subdivisions to support a sustainable source of water. And that really is something that could be implemented not only at the development and review level, but then also as we look to future code updates. All right, so shifting gears here to the growth management approach, comments that we received, the Planning Commission considered a couple of comments. One, that the plan doesn't necessarily define a clear enough strategy for making infrastructure and services available to our next greenfield growth areas, as well as just a general desire to know if we have any policy options to further disincentivize greenfield development at the urban periphery. And this is a complex topic, and so in terms of delving into these issues, the Planning Commission really focused on the plan's overall policy framework that is aimed at taking a more fiscally responsible approach to growth, while at the same time noting that there are significant growth management limitations that we as a city face. So to give you just a little bit more detail on some of those growth management limitations, one of them is our established Truckee Meadows Service Area, or TMSA boundary, and within it our sphere of influence boundary. So the boundary that you can see on the map on the slide was largely set in about 2006. And so once that boundary was set, the city moved forward and made a variety of decisions. It applied master plan land use designations to the lands that were included in that boundary. We adopted zoning designations. A lot of that zoning was planned unit development zoning, which is significant because the city is not able to unreasonably impair the provisions or the reliance on the provisions of planned unit development handbooks. And so what's significant further there is that a lot of those handbooks that were adopted didn't necessarily have time limitations specified, so it makes it difficult for us to re-review them if development doesn't proceed forward within a specific time frame. Additionally, noting in terms of growth management limitations, we have revenue limitations that do make it challenging for the city to proactively use infrastructure to guide the timing and location of development. And it's those same revenue limitations that also create a reliance on new development to help us maintain our city revenues over time. So in light of all of those growth management limitations that we do need to be very cognizant of, the Planning Commission did note that there are a variety of policies and implementation strategies in the draft plan that set us up to manage growth more efficiently in the future. And what are those policies? First off, we have really kind of updated priority areas in terms of our growth tiers where we want to see development and investment in the near term. And so really most important there is it's our infill and redevelopment areas that are kind of in that top tier. Additionally, we've built into the plan a host of new parameters for greenfield development. Darcy talked about our land use categories. That's really going to help us understand the type and location of growth. So just out of the gate there, that will be very, very useful. We also have built into the plan fiscal impact analyses for large master plan amendments and planned unit developments, and a standardized approach for those fiscal impact analyses, so really trying to give decision makers more and better information at a variety of different discretionary review levels. And then the development of a planned unit development timing and phasing policy, so that we have that in place. It's in a lot of our newer handbooks, but really trying to formalize that, so if development doesn't proceed forward within a particular timeframe, it can come back for review. Also, the plan sets up really expanding tools to proactively plan for infrastructure and services. Some of the key tools here are land supply monitoring, also taking a more active role in managing our sphere of influence, not only the city itself, but also in partnership with the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. Those two things together should help us be much more clear in terms of the locations that the city is planning for growth and what type of growth. Also, really kind of detailed infrastructure analyses for our priority growth areas so that we can have an understanding of what needs to kind of really spur development in those locations. Certainly, the development of a comprehensive public services, facilities, and infrastructure plan will also help with that kind of proactive planning for infrastructure and services. And then really just looking to expand over time the city's ability to fund infrastructure and services. And a lot of this comes down to really focusing on changes to the property tax structure. And so noting kind of all of these various policies, implementation strategies that are built into the growth management policy framework of the updated plan, the Planning Commission did recommend really expanding an existing implementation strategy that tees up the development of a comprehensive public services, facilities, and infrastructure plan to make it very clear that that's a piece of the city's overall growth management strategy that should very much help with the overall timing. And also related to growth, the Planning Commission considered comments regarding the city's annexation policy in the new master plan, a consideration of potentially having a policy component that specifies location in the city's 7-year annexation program or its sphere of influence as one of those policy components that needs to be considered as annexations move forward. As initially drafted, the policy didn't include criteria that would guide the location in that 7-year program or the sphere of influence. And that was really because it is fiscally advantageous for the city to have flexibility regarding future annexation, because we do get enhanced revenues from new development compared to existing development, even though the market values are the same. And again, that's really all going back to our property tax structure. So the Planning Commission definitely discussed all of those factors. After the end of a discussion on this topic, what their recommendation was to include one policy component that does note location in the city's sphere of influence as one of those criteria that guides future annexations. And focusing on future development potential at the Reno Stead Airport, the Commission heard concern that future non-residential development at that location could impact the city and surrounding areas but doesn't pay property taxes. Here, the Planning Commission really reflected on the fact that non-aviation development of a non-residential nature has been contemplated at the Reno Stead Airport since the early 2000s through the adoption of the Reno Stead Airport Regional Center Plan, as well as the supporting mixed-use zoning that allows for that wide range of non-residential uses. And so additionally, kind of moving forward with those planning documents and zoning in place, the airport has moved forward in 2016 with the approval of a master development agreement for the Reno Stead Airport Business Park. So they're making strides and moving forward there. Ultimately, what the Planning Commission recommended is no change to the policy approach in the plan, noting that not only have a lot of steps been taken, but the Reno Stead Airport is a very critical component of our industrial land supply, but noting that there are desires to understand if there are additional alternative service options or financial mechanisms. That's something that they wanted to build into an implementation strategy to explore further with the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. And lastly, the Planning Commission also considered comments that additional discretionary review in downtown Reno should be revisited. As drafted, the new master plan really carries forward our current master plan approach of allowing most projects to proceed forward to discretionary review as a way to kind of shorten the time frame and resources and get infill and redevelopment projects online more quickly, noting that they already face a variety of challenges in terms of potential infrastructure issues, financing complexities, higher land costs. And so generally what the Planning Commission supported is carrying forward that approach, but noting that through an expanded implementation strategy, we can consider what might be some additional project threshold reviews, whether those are kind of discretionary or design in nature, as we look to our code updates of the downtown Reno Regional Center. So with all of those changes, the Planning Commission did recommend to the council that the council adopt the new master plan and repeal the existing master plan subject to conformance review by the Regional Planning Commission. However, following that Planning Commission public hearing, we did get some feedback from Washoe County staff on a data error that ultimately influenced the draft land use map. So wanted to let you know that the feedback that we received is that for a property located at 16025 South Virginia Street, we had translated this property to unincorporated transition because Washoe County's zoning data was telling us that it was general rural. That was actually an error, and so the property is zoned neighborhood commercial. And had we known that, we would have applied the suburban mixed use category, just directly translating from zoning. So noting that this is essentially a data error, we are looking for the council to apply the suburban mixed use land use designation to this particular parcel. So shifting gears here to discussion of the draft plan. Madam Clerk, would it be possible to get the document camera? Okay. All right, so for today's discussion on the draft master plan, Bill really kind of set up how we're going to approach the discussion today. We have not only our consulting team, but also staff from the various city departments with us today, staff from a variety of our partner entities that have worked so wonderfully with us throughout this entire process. So we certainly have a lot of folks here so that we can help to answer any questions that you might have on the draft plan. But what we are working toward is developing an agreed upon list of issues that need to come back for additional council direction on December 13th. And those could be issues related to one of the Planning Commission recommended changes. They could be issues related to other locations in the draft plan. But regardless, the issues will be brought back for a future meeting. And just to make sure that we all know where we are in this conversation so that we're all on the same page, what we are requesting is that we have a clear understanding of what the problem with the plan language is as drafted. So to that end, where it's available, identifying the actual location of concern, whether that be a particular policy, a particular implementation strategy, or page number. And as we move forward, what we'll be looking to do is work with the council members to develop council-sponsored proposed language for the full council to consider at December 13th. And we'll need to move pretty quickly with this just in terms of getting staff reports prepared. So we'll be working to connect with you and get that sponsored language finalized by November 17th. And so this is looking ahead, but just wanted to set up, we do have possible motions that can be utilized at the appropriate time, but definitely wanted to shift here to discussion.
All right, thank you. I think you did a fantastic job. You should be very proud of yourself. All right, I'm going to call on Councilwoman Breckus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I echo your comment on the fantastic job and work that's been done by our staff, present and past, our consultant team, the public who showed up and gave us their thoughts, and our Planning Commission, because being on Planning Commission is a big job. Being on Planning Commission when you're adopting a master plan, it's a lot of added work. I want to thank you also for going over the different points. I don't know if you have that first slide, because I wanted to address a couple of those points and just give some thoughts on those. And then I prepared some sponsored language, and I think you've adopted if others have comments, you'd like to see it in the same form. I don't know if people would have a chance to opine on the wording that I've recommended so it could get baked in and we could move on to other discussion items. Do you have the 9 items, the policy clarifications? Because I just wanted to comment on a couple of those. And how they track with my comments. The first one was, I'll get right to the levels of services and targets. On the one hand, I think using the word targets is a little bit of a watering down, but it could also be interpreted as parsing language. I think that's fine. So I didn't include it in my comments. I will say that what I understand is this discussion that the council, that we have another implementation step, and that is this public facilities infrastructure. And to me, that is going to be the framework that may have to be accomplished and completed before we consider some large impacting developments. You know, maybe a parcel out on the Sphere annexation on Leroy Street is not going to be an issue, but maybe something that would append a mid-sized Nevada city may need for us to do that, because it turns the boat from developer-driven impacting to us stating out clearly where we are, where we think we can go in different areas with the growth that we're seeing. So I'm happy to see that. I think that one comment that I wrote on that you mentioned was the relationship to the Reno Stead Airport plan. And I called up on my memo, item 4, there's several plans that are said, these are the plans and we accept and adopt them. And they're all, interestingly, with the exception of the airport, completed by the Nevada System of Higher Education. I'm just concerned that if we've said this is the plan and then that body completely changes the plan, have we said, you know, it's the plan on this date, and do we have a mechanism for them to update those plans? I'd like to hear from staff on that, but I'm gonna move on in my limited time. I think it's just more of a procedural sort of thing. I'm still not happy with the language about the water purveyors, and I've created language to that. I think that the water supply, there's a table that says water supply, and it says TUMWA/water purveyors, and I'd like right behind water purveyors to say in limited situations, and also language that says the creation of new private water utilities and or expansion of existing private systems to service new growth areas is highly discouraged. I think that gives us a strong message, but also some leeway. You know, have your private water system, but just don't come to the city of Reno to triple or quadruple the density there, because when we have triple or quadruple Reno residents on a private water utility, which are being served by, you know, basically a for-profit, not accountable to the local governments for a very important component of their, you know, their livelihood in those residents. So I think that's better language. There's always room for, you know, change on that, but I think it's stronger. And so I do appreciate that. I'm curious how much we need to really look to no discretionary review in downtown, because I haven't seen a discretionary review in the downtown area in years. I think it's all stripped out. I think we do need more design. And I'll just mention that the other comments that I've proposed are, and they weren't the nine ones, was I think there's an encouragement that a parkland could be taken out of our park system. And it's suggestive rather what I thought was prohibitive. And we actually, you know, at this time, it's the question of how much is going on right now to circumstances and how much is really long-term policy. But we do have an instance right now of an entity promoting that we de-annex a park. And there's been discussions about that. And I think that that's an issue as the liaison to the Park Commission I've seen them struggle with. And so I suggested on page 62 some language that really puts some big hazard signs in if the city is thinking about getting rid of a park. And also to the woman who was here talking about open space and open space program, you know, who feels that, you know, the loss of a golf course would be loss of open space, and I think that can be accepted. Is I don't think there's an expressive value, but really, if you see, it was our number one goal, and there's a, Ms. Clerk, could you put that up about what the number one what I sent you, is the open space program. But we don't have an expressive value that we want to stand up an open space program and acknowledge the limitation to that is finances. You know, we bought Northgate and those people paid for it, but we do not have a program for a open space program, and I think we should. And then the other one is that I think the transportation session is a little bit weak. I don't think it states that the predominant value is safety. And that's federal policy. That's how RTC's plan is. And maintaining the system, even over new congestion relief. It's a balance when you start applying the dollars, but I think that we need a strong statement that maintenance is most important. And then I have a few other comments, but I'll stop on those right now. One's about the joint planning, but also about the delineation between centers and neighborhood centers. And I know staff has had a few days to look at those comments, and maybe they're ready to prepare some response to my comments.
If I could, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, so see, conservation open space is the most popular reimagined topic so far. So I think we need an aspirational goal that we want to stand up an open space program like every great Mountain West city does. Because if we don't, we're failing and we're falling behind. Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to point out, to kind of help everybody see the issues that are being brought up, one thing that we are planning to do, Callie has her laptop. It will ultimately be connected. You'll be able to see on the screen what are the issues that everybody agrees on. Certainly, we have kind of differing levels of what's been provided in terms of language. You know, we certainly have Councilwoman Breckus's letter. We expect that other topics are going to come up today. They're going to kind of go on to this list of issues that we say, yes, these are going to come back for further discussion on December 13th. And so regardless of whether they're brought up today or we know about them, you know, through letters and public comment, we still want to follow the same process of being able to, you know, work with the council member that brings up the issue, kind of have a chance to work through the language, be able to try and align it as best we can with kind of the style and flow of the existing master plan. And so that's really what we want to be able to do kind of over this next week. So when it seems like the right time, we're ready to connect in with the laptop so everybody can see all of those issues that end up added to that list. So just wanted to flag that for you as well.
All right, thank you very much. Go ahead, Councilman Bobsey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I want to join in the congratulations to the team. This has been an extraordinary process, and it's something that I think that we can be all quite proud of. I love being able to tell residents and neighbors and folks in different settings about just how large and robust the public input was in this process. It's really quite incredible and remarkable. And I will say from the Regional Planning Governing Board perspective as well, that this really sets the bar for public participation and comprehensiveness in a way that we're going to have to make sure that this is what's followed when we do the regional plan update. We've definitely put our partner governments on notice in the region that this is the standard of excellence that we're achieving. And I think that this is a productive session in which we're hashing out kind of our final concerns to try to get this right. I do want to make a statement in defense of staff that, you know, we should be very careful not to wordsmith, but to provide input and ideas and concepts that we want to see responded to. But I'm very sensitive that the overall language of the plan be consistent and accessible throughout. And I think anytime we have different authors jumping in with various parts of the plan, it starts to kind of muddy some things up. But I do want to touch on a couple of these issues without suggesting language, but definitely kind of making the concepts clear as to what I would like to see when it comes back, and we can go from there. A lot of kudos on the closed basin flood management. I think that's a big step forward for us in this plan. And there are no absolutes, but clearly this is a major issue that we're concerned about, particularly with future growth that's coming. You know, how we're going to deal with this. And I will share with you that, you know, at conversations with staff at the Regional Planning Governing Board level, you know, they're looking at, you know, the overall stormwater picture and how this is all going to come together. So I think this is a great step toward that. I do think you're getting pretty close on target as we're talking about service targets versus standards. We are trying to find that sweet spot where we're making it very clear what we intend to provide to citizens through future growth without putting anybody in a box, without setting unnecessary expectations that because of the big things hanging over us, and I'll say it again, depreciation, how we're going to provide services, how we make sure that services that the growth pays for the growth. You know, we have a faulty tax structure that is preventing us from achieving that. Nonetheless, we're going to try to make it clear what the expectations are. The water resources provided by private water purveyors. I think this is a fascinating one. I think we're making where the language is right now is a huge step forward. But I think in the context of the conversations that we had on Monday in our concurrent meeting about what it is we're actually talking about here, when we talk about the quality of water systems, it's about water quality and making sure that we're providing safe drinking water. And, you know, as we learned in those presentations and as we discussed, you know, this is a complex marble cake federalism that we deal with the Clean Drinking Water Act, in that, State Department of, or Division of Environmental Protection delegates authorities to the local governments. We've got the Health Board, we've got TUMWA. Hopefully, we're moving forward with TUMWA being able to be kind of the lead on these issues, and that waiver will be reinstated. And the requirement that the infrastructure from any private water purveyor meet the standards, it's not just, as we've expressed in the past, concern that ratepayers not be on the hook for faulty systems in the future when TUMWA ultimately takes over those systems, but also making sure that it's safe, whatever it is. Look, I'm not saying that I'm a fan of private water purveyors. It's not my place to be a fan or not a fan, but the reality is there is a system of accountability in place for them, and it's called the Public Utilities Commission. So, I think it's okay to have some language that talks maybe that it's not ideal to have a private water purveyor, but I don't know, highly discouraged. I just, again, it makes me nervous that a plan that sets out policies and aspirations and desires not ever drift into this is the hard and fast and we can't do this. And I do think that the language that's here steps forward, is a pretty big leap forward. But I do think entertaining some language about acknowledging that that is an unusual situation. It's not the best, but I'm also concerned that we not cede our oversight of growth to TUMWA, which again, we share in the governance. It's not just the city of Reno that runs that water authority. I mean, this is the complicated situation that we have. The annexations piece, I think, is very important. And from a policy perspective, I don't necessarily want to weigh in one way or the other about linking, does it have to be in the SOI and contiguous? I mean, we can argue that back and forth. I guess from a process standpoint about where this policy, where this master plan fits into our upcoming regional plan discussions, where the TMSA, spheres of influence, the buckets, all of that is going to be on the table and the big part of the discussion. And we're going to have some very contentious discussions about that. I'm a little bit nervous about setting hard and fast what our policy is yet without being able to engage in our regional partners about how all of this is going to work. So again, I'm not giving a hard and fast as to where I come down on that. I just want to make sure that we are not unwittingly cutting ourselves off from options that we're going to need to have available to us as we go through those conversations of updating the regional plan. The Reno Stead Airport development potential, this is a tricky one. I like where this is going, and I think this is the conversation that we have to have. I mean, there is a big area of our city up there that we're in a pretty unique situation. So we look forward to working with our partners at the Airport Authority on these issues. But I do like that we're talking about and putting it out there that we're looking at financial mechanisms. I think that's important. The discretionary review in downtown Reno, I'm wary on this one just because, here we are trying to build a plan that is making it very attractive to do density and to do infill, and I'd be very concerned about unwittingly putting in place any disincentives to that. At the same time, we're talking about making sure that we're striking the proper balance between greenfield development and infill density. I'm very nervous that we not do anything to unwittingly cut off our options there. So those are my comments for now. I'm interested to hear how other folks go. But again, big defense for let's get these concepts out there. And I've been very impressed with staff thus far in being able to try to synthesize these and bring them into a common language for purposes of the plan. And I'm confident that they can take this conversation and deliver something similar to us very soon that we can hopefully get done and get approved.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. I think those are fantastic comments, Councilman. Councilman Delgado.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You have a technical difficulty there.
All right. Just wanted to thank staff as well and our consultants. You guys did a great job. I'm not going to jump into quite as much depth as my fellow council members here. Just wanted to congratulate you guys on the amount of community input. So it was about two years worth of community input, and I know I participated on a few of those. So thank you guys for just especially the multi-demographical outreach that you guys were able to do. One of my things, just briefly, just of the 9 up here, is a closed basin flood management. I think that's great work that you guys did there, especially. But I wanted to ask a question in terms of relation of how update with some of our flooding issues. Are we using the most updated FEMA maps and those things, and are those going to be applicable to the new zoning changes or current open spaces that we have across the city of Reno? I know I have lots of concerned residents in the Donner Springs area with critical flood zones ones. We have new development coming forward in terms of infrastructure. There's always been discussion between the flood management board and RTC in terms of which maps to use and which ones are not being used, and are they working in conjunction with the projects and so forth. So give me a little bit of clarity on that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we have a kind of a robust set of policies in the draft master plan. The ones that are proposed by the Planning Commission would really add to that. And what it does is set up a lot of work. So in terms of what do we use moving forward, we certainly have our flood hazard mapping that is provided by FEMA. That is something that our policies set up using in terms of mitigating development, but then our code comes in to support that in terms of elevations and what they can increase and cannot increase by. Additionally, our code also has a provision on the critical flood zone 1. And so if you think about each of those two things together, those are kind of our floodplain management ordinances. And so we would be looking through an existing implementation strategy to revisit those in the future. In terms of what we need to do that, we would need some updated information. So we'd be looking to say what do we need to integrate into our flood hazard area ordinances, and then what do we need to look into integrating and revisiting in terms of our critical flood zone 1 ordinance. And then also to help inform kind of our stormwater management ordinances, this is where we also have additional kind of technical work set up in terms of, further study in terms of infiltration for our closed basins so that we can go back and revisit those calculations and what are the appropriate mitigation strategies. So there is additional information that's needed to make sure that we're doing all of those updates based on technical work. And we do have staff here from Public Works that can speak to some of that work in more detail. Certainly Janelle Thomas also from Community Development Engineering if you have more detailed questions on the engineering side of things.
And lastly, if not adopted today, these are things that we can take up, as you guys stated earlier, in terms of with certain council members, in terms of now what's been laid in front of us today and with public comment and so forth, correct?
Absolutely. We'd be definitely looking to know what the issue is today so we can add it to that list. But then, yes, we'd be able to work further.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor Jar.
Thank you very much. Again, to staff, there are 2 years of working on this and hundreds of community meetings. I attended a number of them. The thing that I took away from a lot of those meetings was, particularly when dealing with a lot of the things for downtown, was you had a very mixed group of individuals that were both from advocating for housing and affordable housing in the downtown core, to the university, to those in the entertainment core. And while all of them were in the room, and they may not have all agreed fully with each other at the end of the meeting, they certainly came away with a much deeper understanding of each other's perspective. And they kind of, through multiple meetings, kind of got it. They're like, okay, now I get why certain things, why they come from this. And they were all very civil and very productive and very collaborative. And that, to me, was the best part that I saw come out of those meetings, was potentially parties that were on completely polar opposite sides of issues really did come together and understood why things were proposed in a certain way and were being facilitated in a certain way. So kudos to staff for facilitating great meetings. All the comments are great. Again, I don't want to get into wordsmithing. I think obviously when it comes to transportation, safety, of course, is the main tenant in all things we do, whether here at the city or at the RTC, and consideration of capacity roads as well as local roads need to have that as the priority. I don't think one takes position over the other, because capacity roads do deal with safety. Capacity roads deal with environmental issues, and when you can't move people and commerce from point A to point B in an effective way, you've messed with that, and you've certainly messed with somebody's quality of life. So capacity roads are important, as are quality of our interior roads. So I think keeping those on an equal plane is important. I think open space, preserving open space, absolutely. We need to have a more, I think Councilwoman Breckus brought forward some great suggestions. I also agree that, is there a possibility of underutilized spaces that for affordable housing? Do we consider that? I don't know. I think that's something we don't want to get too restrictive on. And then with the water purveyors, I too agree with Councilman Bobzian's comments that we need to be cognizant of the individual water purveyors. Verdi is an example where a private water company is going to help us get Tumwa out to Verdi sooner. So I don't want to close the door completely, and there could be a marriage there that actually helps us get where we want to go as a community. And the final comment is Reno Housing Authority came forward with an ask, which I certainly thought was very reasonable, to help facilitate the senior housing project on their parcel. So I would like to see that move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councilwoman Dewar.
Hi, thank you so much. Echo the comments about great job to both the consultants and our staff. Long, arduous process, very input laden from the public, which I so appreciate, and also from us. I'm going to hit a couple topics. And first of all, I think that you guys did a very thorough job, in laying out and addressing a lot of these issues. So these are areas that I just thought could use maybe a little bit more development. I'll get right to it. One of the greatest challenges I've had as a councilwoman is addressing road safety, I'm going to call it, after developments are built. And it's been in every part of Ward 2, whether it's an older area, such as over by Virginia Lake, or a newer area down by South Meadows, or something in between. I have had tremendous amount of constituent requests to address things like pedestrian activated crossings, speed limits, radar, stop signs, street lights that were not put in when the development was put in. And one of the things I'd like to see is a consideration of requiring ultimately, and you would all come up with what the policy might be, but somehow escrowing funds for these as developments come on, as they fill up with people, the issues reveal themselves. And what often happens again is that it falls back on the city to provide all the things I just said, which is an expense to the city, which we don't have the money to fund. And then we are always having to balance, well, can we afford to pay for this thing? Well, do we have to wait for 3 people to get injured or killed till we do the thing? So I'd rather see it addressed up front when the developments are coming in, so staff you can think about that. Parking, as we develop areas that are very interesting and attractive, and I'll just use a Midtown example, parking has become a real challenge. We have policies that allow for reductions in TOD zones, which are transit-oriented development areas. I would like to see a policy in here for shared parking so that as developments come forward, we don't just have a developer say, this is my property, I'm making this many spots available for parking. I want to see some kind of shared concept. And this will apply to various town centers, neighborhood centers, and retail areas. See what you can do with that. In transportation, we're facing a lot of big developments coming in, particularly in the North Valleys. Most of the big ones have come in the South Valleys. I would like to see policies that encourage the contemporaneous development of roads with the developments. And I understand, just with some conversations, for example, a big one coming to us soon is Stonegate, that they're looking at reanalyzing traffic with each tentative map. And I think that's a good plan, so that the roads can keep pace with the people. However it happens, I don't think it's part of our code today or even our policies, so I'd like to see something along those lines to to address those issues, as well as transit. I think we should even put a greater emphasis on train, bus, Uber, whatever, and senior and ADA transport network in the developments. And I'll give an example. The affordable development came up earlier this year. People were concerned it was too far out, and they were thinking that might be a reason to deny it. I would like to see the policies such that you want to put something far out, either north, south, or Verdi or wherever, then you have to look at how are those people going to get wherever they need to get, whether they're working or retired or whatever. On the Tumwa issues, I would rather not focus so much on public-private Tumwa, this or that. I guess my thought is to focus more on what is it about Tumwa that is attractive to us? Well, they bring the ability to interconnect and interfinger resources, surface water and groundwater. So whether it's a public or private, most of these systems we're talking about are small. And I think that's the thing that distinguishes them, whether they're regulated by PUC or not, or regulated by a government agency, which public ones are. The challenge is they often don't have the capacity to have groundwater and surface water to do reinjection. So maybe there should be policies about that we want to be able to see integrated water systems that can balance the sources in dry and wet periods. And, not focus so much about whether it's Tumwa or this one or that one, but do they have this kind of capacity? Floodplains, just a comment there. I would like to see a little bit more explication of protection of floodplains, their functions. And it's in several places in the book. One thing I'd like to see there is just plain old discouraging fill in the 100-year floodplain. The Truckee Meadows was a meadow. The whole darn thing was a floodplain. We have filled 90% of this floodplain. I think the last 10% of the floodplain that's left, we need to have some special protective policies on for the functions they provide. And I'm happy to work with staff, whatever it takes to talk about that. And finally, or last two things would be the open space. I think we should be talking community open space, community trust, public open space, whether it's a thing we do with the county, whatever it is. It was our number one issue that from the public. I think we need to do everything we can to protect it and enhance it. We have some good policies in here. I did not see the word view shed anywhere. And I think right now that's something that really separates us and makes us different than other cities. And I want to see a protection of the view shed, at least that word used somewhere. And then, sorry, a couple more things. On schools, I'm not sure today what our policy is about developments setting aside land for schools. Some say to me, I'm voluntarily setting aside this land for this elementary school, this high school, but I don't know what our policy framework is on that. What are we requiring to help support the school board? Fire, just an example, Collin Ranch fire came. I thought my home was 1,000 houses between me and that fire, and within 8 hours, it was at my doorstep, coming down a canyon, a ravine. And so that was a misunderstanding. I think a lot of times when we do developments, we say, well, they need at least 2 access points and those kind of things. But I really think that we should adopt some additional policies in our development so that we really do, whether it's defensible space, whether it's ingress and egress, whether it's alarms, whatever it is, those would be the specifics, but however you want to phrase this policy, I leave to you. And then finally, development agreement, joint plan. I would like to at least see that discussed in here somewhere. Like we just sent a recommendation over to the Regional Planning Commission that we would like to do a joint plan on that area south, right by Rhodes Road. I wasn't really sure what that was. I mean, it sounded right. It sounded like it's an interface area and we should do one, but I really think that we should kind of talk about that a little bit more in this policy document. And I guess my final comment is on historic resources. We talk about incentives. I would like to just see, a word too about expectations or requirements or what our vision is about our historic resources somewhere in here. Thank you. I know that was a lot, but everybody took a little bit of time. I got to end with great job. Okay, great job. Little refinements here before we do our final adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dara. Councilmember McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I too need to echo the compliments to those involved in the master plan. And there's a couple of them that think I'm a hard-headed old fart, and they're probably right. There's a couple of issues that I found going through this that aren't on the outstanding policies, and I've discussed one of them initially with staff, and that's in our economic development strategy. And right at the beginning, we're talking about us having a strategy, and then the way we've worded the language, we're going to follow EDON's strategy, and I don't think that's appropriate. If we're going to move forward with a strategy to address the true issues we have in our community, we need to come up with a strategy, and we need to ask EDON to follow our strategy, not us follow theirs. Staff is, and I've been working on some wording in this. an additional point in there in 1.1C. We again relinquish our control of the strategy to EDON, and we need to clarify that. But the other issue is that we state our willingness to partner with just one organization in this community that retains business and helps business grow, and that's the Chamber of Commerce. And I can see some members of other organizations in our community that I'm sure they would like our help and our partnership in their industries as well. So I'd like to eliminate the Chamber of Commerce recommendation and change that to community business organizations so that we can embrace all of those organizations and work forward on our regional initiatives in economic development. If we don't change our direction of what we're trying to import into our community for economic development, our affordable housing issue is going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that isn't EDON's plan, so we need to try to get some input into that and some power into that. Another issue back in our, I'll have to thumb through all these things, but we have a provision in here where we talk about encouraging people to produce foods. And then we talk about trees. If we're going to encourage people to produce foods, shouldn't fruit trees be the trees that we're requiring around residences so that we're encouraging people to produce food and we're given a green coverage as well? The other issue that I have that I'm not sure how we address, we have a number of areas of our community that have one artery that feeds them and it's the one vein that gets the blood back and forth from that part of the community to the central part of our community. Everybody has to travel down that artery to get to work. Everybody has to travel on that artery to go home. If they want to come to town for a special event, they've got to travel down those arteries. And we have not had sufficient input into maintaining capacity in those arteries to keep the blood flowing in our community. And when we approve development, and the North Valleys has come up several times, we have one vein that leads to the North Valleys, is 395. And I'm sorry, we've got cholesterol, and we've got a clog at the spaghetti bowl, and if we don't fix that, we're going to have a heart attack. And we need to make sure that our veins are clear before we put any more pressure on this system. We have to have a capacity to do that within our master plan. If you aren't going to clear the artery, if you're not going to get rid of the cholesterol, then we need to put some new veins in so that we've got other routes to get people to and from the center of our town. So we need to look at how we build into our concurrency plan that is an overriding influence on whether we approve development in the future, because this city is getting ready to have a heart attack, and it's caused by a place called the Spaghetti Bowl. And everybody knows spaghetti bowls cause high cholesterol, and this one has got the cholesterol level way up there. So that argument leads me to my argument I had with staff over levels of service and the targets versus standards. And once I got to that section of the regional plan and read how it's used in there, I believe that where it's utilized, targets is appropriate, and where it's utilized, standards are appropriate within what we've got in the plan. And so I think that that they've done a real good job on that. Because the levels of service on our roadways is a standard. The levels of service that we provide, that are police, fire, et cetera, are targets that we're trying to achieve, and we're hoping that as we develop as a community, we can reach those targets. So I think it's a very good mix. And once I read it, instead of reacting to it, it was much clearer to me. On the subject of private water purveyors, I've got a different take on this. If we build in Verdi and we have a private water purveyor there and we have no link with Tumwa does not want to assume service to that area, and that system fails, this city is financially responsible for getting water to those citizens. And I do not believe that you should be held responsible for that developer's development. That developer needs to build the infrastructure to tie into Tumwa, and if that's an agreement that says, we're gonna sell water to you, I'll kind of take that. But if it's, my preference is that if they can't get an agreement with Tumwa for Tumwa to serve them, then they need to develop in the county and let the county assume the responsibility of it. You're still gonna pay for it, but this city shouldn't assume that financial liability for those private water purveyors. And we're not talking about small purveyors. We're not talking about 100 and 200 home purveyors. We're talking about purveyors that have got 10,000 houses that they're providing for, and we've got to build the infrastructure to put them into Tumwa's system when they fail. Why not do it right? The developer is responsible for putting that infrastructure in. He should do the initial investment when he builds, or we should not accept their development into our community. Closed basin, I've done a lot of studying on this, and the Truckee Meadows Regional Drainage Manual is about as vague as you can get. And the big problem is that all the references to what we do in the city of Reno refer to RMC. So what we have in our master plan is that we're going to intensify our drainage codes, then we better get with it, because it's our responsibility under that drainage manual for us to take that action and change those codes to meet the level that we want. So I appreciate the reference to review of the manual, but that manual was designed so that each entity could modify how they wanted to enforce it underneath the manual without being in violation of the manual. Maybe what we need to do is talk about putting more distinct definitions and requirements in that manual so that all of our partners are working under the same language. Because, for example, in the North Valleys, every one of those drainages are not only affected by the city of Reno, they're affected by Washoe County. And we can do all we want to address those issues. If the county isn't doing anything to address them, then we've still got a problem out there. So I really appreciate the work that's gone into this, especially the pinpointing of the fact that our closed basin management needs to be a priority as we move forward. It's not going to stop the water this year. I wish it would, but it's not going to. The annexation proceedings, I agree with Councilman Bobzian. We really need to consider what our goal is moving forward and make sure that that's addressed into the regional plan, that we control those spheres of influences more. I kind of agree with the idea that if it's not in our sphere of influence and it isn't contiguous both, that we shouldn't even be looking at it for annexation, but that's not a hill for me to die on. The Reno Stead Airport development potential is a thorn in my side. We have an entity that is within the city of Reno that requires city of Reno services, that does not pay any taxes for those services. They would like to put a large industrial development in that property, and we've got a road network up there that cannot handle a large industrial component there. I completely support airports flying in and flying out. But when you start putting trucks on the streets in front of schools and in neighborhoods, there's an issue, and it's pretty hard unless we build a whole new arterial to get truck traffic out of Reno Stead without interfacing with residential school zones and other things. So I look forward to working with the Reno Airport Authority on that and seeing how we can resolve those issues, because while I would like to see them able to develop up there, I hope that it doesn't happen at the detriment to the community, because those people in the Stead area up there have enough issues that improper planning have caused them right now. And I hope we don't intensify those. And discretionary review downtown, we've got a plan that says what we want downtown. As long as it's within that plan, I agree that we can reduce discretionary review. But we all know that the guy's going to come in that doesn't want to follow the plan, so we need to be ready for that person that we have the discretionary review in place for. So again, great job. Thanks for putting up with me. And I can see why now we're going to have to wait for another meeting to approve this.
All right, thank you, Councilmember McKenzie. So I guess you're saying that we need to do surgery? This is what I'm hearing? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I think each council member made some incredible comments and some great points. So I'm not going to continue to go on and on. So I'm going to make it very short. But I do think we need to take a critical view on open space. I think I'm really proud this council this has been something that has been a priority since I've been on the council. So I'm not surprised at that. And also flooding and water is going to need a major microscope. But we also need, I can't remember which council member said it, but you're right, having our regional partners really come together on this strategy, because we cannot do it alone. We have to have them at the table. Also, I would agree with downtown. It's something that at this point, we are in this stage sort of at the tipping point, and sometimes you have to be a little careful about no good deed goes unpunished. So, but I also do think sometimes you want to do things right and not necessarily fast. So anyway, I'm gonna move forward because I know that I'm looking at, we've got to start our other meeting. So I'm gonna ask each council member, please wrap this up. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. I know Councilwoman Breckus wanted to chime in really quickly, or?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's good if we each provide some response to where we're at with what, some of the comments our colleagues made. I want to say I'm going to have to temper my need on this to ask too much of this document. You know, we've already said we're going into the zoning code. There may be issues here that really should be in the zoning code. So I'm going to spend attention when the rewrites come in on that. That next phase about the growth management, the infrastructure and public adequacy component, that's going to be critical. Financing mechanisms. Something may just have to wait until money's done to upgrade the Stead water treatment plant. Even legislative changes, standing up a drainage district. Those are to-do things that we're going to have to look at the light of things coming down us, that there's more work to be done. We can't task too much of this document, and that's something I'm going to be thinking about in the next weeks. I concur and would be interested in seeing the language related to the economic development partnerships that Mr. McKenzie brought up. That's of interest to me. I'd also be interested in a strong statement that Ms. Dewar said about just no more fill. That would be guidance with special use permits in filling. We see a lot of those. I appreciate Ms. Jardin's comments that safety as a transportation value needs to be preeminent. That tension, though, between expanding capacity to outlying areas and maintaining your existing system, I think is one that is a fine balance. And I think that should be acknowledged that it is within the framework of cost restraints for funding transportation. That's federal policy that the dollars for transportation are constrained and tough decisions need to be made. Someday this region will face a point of, are we going to invest a decade's worth of money into the spaghetti bowl, or how are we going to time the spaghetti bowl improvements so that we, if we do it all in one shot, we could allow, 10,000, 1,000 miles of local roads to fail in that period of time. So I think that cost constraint is a very important theme. One issue I didn't bring up, and I'll just bring it up, is the Planning Commission, and I'm the liaison, values are that we see things that they don't see. And they brought that up to me individually in comments. And one thing that isn't in here, and it's this tension between acute and long-term, is on the fiscal related to the cross-subsidization of ratepayers. And I think that's the heart of what we're feeling in this waste management conflict that's been going on for 5 years. So I would like a value or a statement that it's not desirable to cross-subsidize ratepayers. I think we're also seeing some of that in our sewer, and I think there's a few policies related to finances, and I think this is one that could set the template for thinking about the utility work that we do. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to ask any other council members for any wrap-up points.
Madam Mayor, could I?
Go ahead, Councilman Bobley.
Being next in line, I could give all kinds of responses to everything that I heard, but we could be here all day. So other than just commending Councilman McKenzie on taking Paulism metaphors to a whole new level with the cholesterol piece, if you're ready to take a motion, I'm comfortable that staff has heard a very thorough conversation and can bring back some options for us for adoption at the next one. If you're ready to take the motion, but I'll leave it.
If I can make a point of
I want to be
clarification.
respectful. I want to be respectful of Councilwoman Dewar. Do you want to give me 1 minute? of a
Yeah, I'll give
wrap-up,
you 1 minute.
please?
I had neglected to mention the need for stormwater management utility. I think we addressed it, but I think it just needs to be in there in a way that we all see it, because it's affecting us so much. On connectivity, one thing I had left out was, I didn't find in the plan, not just road connectivity, Wi-Fi. So I think we need to make sure that we fold the new technology into our policies. And then finally, on the floodplains, yesterday I spent some time with the flood project, and I saw a map, which the map is after the couple projects are built, what are we left with? Everything's still really flooded, and it was kind of amazing. So we've had 15 years to try to get the flood project built, and at this point, it's going to be at least another 15 to 30, and so we've got to do some things at a regulatory level ourselves, since a project's not going to fix it. Thank you.
All right, great comments, Councilwoman Dewar. Vice Darden.
Thank you very much. My comments will be very, very brief. With regards to downtown, I think we all want to encourage infill and revitalization projects. My concern is putting more barriers, not fewer. It's already expensive. Land is expensive. To rehab projects downtown is expensive. My concern is that we don't need any more barriers. We need fewer. So I just want to keep that in mind as we try to redevelop our downtown. As far as the spaghetti bowl goes, phasing it means we end up in construction purgatory, which I think everybody is tiring of and has over the last decades. I think you do it and you do it right, and you unclog that artery is my final comments.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to send it. Go ahead, Councilman Delgado.
Just for clarity, really quick, earlier today we heard public comment. I think Vice Mayor Jarna stated that she's supportive of making a zone change to a Sutro property from a public commenter. I don't believe that, I'm interested in doing spot zoning today, especially within communities, but I don't believe that public commenter necessarily needs to do that amendment change in order if they get it in before we adopt the project. So currently, my belief is that project can move ahead with the current land use without making spot zoning happen today. Can you correct that for me, Sienna?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So for some additional background, Madam Clerk, if I could get the document camera. So the 5 properties that are generally along Sutro, you can see on the map overhead. Under the existing master plan, they have a land use designation of mixed residential that allows for 3 to 21 dwelling units an acre. Under the new master plan, because the zoning is MF14, it has been translated to mixed neighborhood. And we, with the updated land use categories, we're really trying to focus on that mixed neighborhood category, providing more of a missing middle housing product, so really small lot, detached single-family townhomes, duplexes, triplexes. So I wanted to be clear today that the zoning is not changing at all, and this was a very straight translation. If there is a desire in this particular area to see higher densities, that is kind of one of the options that we will bring back to you in December 13th. Before that timeframe, they could certainly submit for a zone change to a higher zone of MF21, and given that it would be under the current master plan, it would be processed under the current master plan land use.
And currently, since it's mixed use, they have the option of doing the zone change up to 21 units. Is that correct, per acre?
Currently.
And so we would see that then possibly in February, March.
That would be correct, and so that would be processed under the existing master plan, not the new master plan. The new master plan doesn't allow for MF21. It has a little bit more of a narrow range in that mixed neighborhood category.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I'd rather not do spot zoning for this particular parcel, just have them move forward with their project as soon as possible so they get their current opportunities to get in play what the project requires.
May I ask a question on that?
Councilwoman Breckus.
It's across the street from the county complex, and it's going to be owned by the housing authority. Is there room to put it public facility And because it's complementary, I understand, to the county, some of the county services.
For the record, Bill Thomas, Assistant City Manager, yes to what Councilmember Breck has just said. I think what I'm hearing from the council is you would like us to return with a solution to their request that is not offensive to where we're going with the master plan. That may be not making a change on that property, which
No,
I think.
I don't want this, we're not talking about this project at all. I mean, this isn't, I don't want to talk about, this is something that's brought up during public comment, just giving advice to that commenter. Put your
Turn an
application in
application
so it
over.
doesn't have to be
I
dealt
see
with
what you're
today as
saying,
spot
okay.
zoning. That doesn't even come before us. I don't want to bring that discussion in play.
Okay.
All right, then I'm going to move forward because we've got to get going on our next meeting. So with that being said, Councilman Bobzing, give me a motion, please.
Hands off, hands off. It's the bacon's for me. Step away from the buffet line. I'm gonna get
Hey,
the.
you get the adjournment motion,
Right.
Councilmember McKenzie.
So I would direct staff to incorporate the discussion that we had and try to synthesize the input into some options for our consideration, consistent with the language of the plan at a future meeting for adoption of the master plan update.
Can
All
I
right,
have a
thank you
point
very
of
much,
order,
sir.
Madam Mayor?
Go right ahead.
May I please request a time and date certain in order to avoid the cost of renoticing
Okay.
this public hearing?
Mr. Thomas, December 13th, is that what I heard before? 10 a.m.?
Yes, actually, we would prefer that you set it for 1 PM.
Okay,
That gives us flexibility within that day.
sounds good.
Rather than having a special meeting, unless the council wants to start at 10. I think 1 PM on the 13th would be adequate.
All right, I'm
1
fine with
1
that.
p.m. on December 13th.
All right. Are you clear, Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Nice job. I'm going to send it back to you, Madam Clerk, and it looks like we have public comment.
We do, Madam Mayor. General public comment for the 10 a.m. meeting. First to speak is Darlene Hesse, if she is still in the audience.
She is right here.
Oh, there she is.
Come on up.
Followed by Sam Dene.
Well, thank you. I had a long time to calm down there, but I really do feel so strongly about all of this. This is just unbelievable. But I want to talk about on Face the State on Sunday. There was a nice man there. I'm sure you people are aware who he is. He's wants to bring in some sort of water. I don't know if they're dams to the amount of $400 million. But in that project that he is proposing to control water, he's not going to, ore ditch is not going to be in there. Well, on the Wild Creek Golf Course, the ore ditch, there are many private owners and shareholders. And I think another thing for the school to be built, that will be another big expense that they'll have to take care of. And anyway, I just cannot, I just don't have words for all this. I'm getting like brain dead from it. But anyway, this Wild Creek project for the schools is going to be built on a floodplain. And I mean, when this golf course floods, it doesn't just run down the center like they're proposing. They'll put buildings on one side and on the other side, and then they'll make this big canal that'll divert the water down to McCarran and under the ground. Well, that's not going to happen. If this is the whole lake, it is unbelievable when the golf course floods. So now the dams are all full. So now when the weather comes, the rains come in the spring, and they start building the schools, and the school is there, the school is going to have endless problems, and you people are going to have the same thing as Lemon Valley to take care of. It's just going to be an unbelievable thing, because where is this water going to go? The dams are full, and then it'll run down to McCarran, and it won't stop at McCarran. It'll go on beyond to Rock Boulevard and all the homeowners in that area, the Mormon church, the other church that is there. I mean, this is going to be such an expensive project for the school to build this, for the school, Washoe County School District, to put this high school in this area. And I'm not just talking alone. I'm talking for many people. We have our lot of meetings, but we're in a working man's area, and people cannot be here all the time. So we take turns in talking about this boondoggle, this $1 billion boondoggle that shouldn't be happening, and it should be up in Sun Valley, and it should be taking place in a area where you have a lot of children. And I love schools. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Sam Dene, followed by Tammy Holt-Still.
It's a nice smiling face over there. Sam, DNA, the heart and soul, the body and mind of Reno. I'm the gunny sergeant for these people up here. Any talents that they have honed, skills that they might have honed through these couple of years they've been on that board up there, they owe to me, Sam. I am responsible for 92% of the good things about Reno. And they're responsible for 92% of the good things that Sam has told them about. And that's not to say that they've done 92% of good things. Only the things that they plagiarize and steal from, even their gumption, that some of them, that Mr. McKenzie has developed. He was like a stick in the woods. Now he gets up there and he's telling jokes and throwing out metaphors like crazy. All of these people learned their talents from Sam. I am living proof that the vote system in Nevada is rigged, and the only thing that's worse than the vote-stealing traitors down in the bowels of the computers is the wacko freak media mouses who are scared in their pantyhose of this 160-pound senior citizen. And thank God we've got police back here. Now we got the assistant chief of police here protecting Sam against these nefarious people out here. I wish you could protect me against the wacko freak media mouses and their insane fear and jealousy of Sam Dene, this person right here, sitting back there. Bumps unlocked. Why do the media even come down here? They either tell lies or they don't say anything. Government, in its basic sense, is who wins, who loses, who pays, and what do the people think? Well, let's just take a look at Tesla. I talked about it before. Tesla, who wins? Those people on the other side of the mountain are winning like bandits. Who loses? All of the citizens in Reno are losing one way or the other. Who wins? Who loses? Who pays? You guys are paying. You guys are paying for these schools. You guys are paying for everything. The Reno media mouses will not. Why in the world will they not? I mean, if we had King Solomon sitting here and said he was Sam Dene, they would not write about King Solomon's brilliance. And my humbleness is only exceeded by my brilliance. And this young lady here worried about Wild Creek. It really is the Wild Creek School $1 billion boondoggle, because they're gonna waste $1 billion on schools if they get away with this scheme. And there's the media mouse wacko freaks who won't write any of this stuff. You know why? Because they're in bed with the developers and all the people who are making the money. They're in bed with them. They pay their puny salaries come from the developers, and who knows what kind of offshore accounts they get for refusing to write and speak the truth. I'm not just against the Reno Gazette wacko freaks, but it's the television. Joe Hart and all of his buddies and pals, they were the same thing, refusing to tell the truth. Just look at me, ladies and gentlemen. Am I worth watching? You like to watch Donald Trump? Well, he's a pipsqueak compared to me, and I got better hair than he does. I'm betting one nice smiley face over there. I'm betting this $100 bill again that these people are going to have some honesty, integrity that they developed from Sam Dene, and they're going to vote down the Wild Creek $1 billion boondoggle.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you over there.
Madam Mayor, our last general public comment from the 10 a.m. meeting is Tammy Holt-Still.
Tammy Holt-Still, Lemon Valley Swan Lake Recovery Committee for the record. I have to commend you. This is the first time I had seen so much effort put into the closed basins and the issues of the flooding. I do have some concerns, though, that were not addressed in there. Number one, will this affect the ones that are coming on board, like Prado and Stonegate, with what you guys have going? Number one. Number two, In this, I heard a lot talked about Tumwa, but I did not hear anything about your sewer plants and getting them so that they are not flooding out other residents. The other thing I noticed was the fact that I agree with the heart was perfect. That was the perfect metaphor for what's going on there. We need, you're totally right. There needs to be a lot of coordination between the county, the city, and Sparks also. That's what the regional is. It needs to be done. The residents, the cities need to be concerned about the residents in the county that are already in the county and are not going to be incorporated into the cities. What you guys do, like I said before, is your backyard affects my front yard. And I've worked really hard on my front yard and I want to keep it. And right now, seeing HESCO barriers up and water going in and Prado Ranch wanting to put in 10 feet of dirt to elevate so that they don't flood is going to flood my yard. So there's got to be some differences done. And I appreciate the work that has been done and I look forward to seeing more done. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Madam Mayor, I have no further general public comment for our first meeting today.
All right, I'm going to send this right back at you, Councilmember McKenzie. Give me a motion to adjourn. All right, thank you. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go into our 12 o'clock meeting. Usually I'd like council members, I know we've been sitting here for about 2 hours. I would like to take a 5-minute break because I need you guys to be refreshed. Sorry. We apologize. Sorry, Mark. We'll be right back. Yeah, let me go to the restroom.